Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Answers from the Lab, where we share Mayo Clinic knowledge and advancements on the state of testing and science from laboratory leaders and the people who are making it happen behind the scenes. I'm Dr. Bobbi Pritt, a clinical microbiologist and the chair of the Division of Clinical Microbiology at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. With me today is Dr. Bill Morice, the chair of the Department of Laboratory Medicine and Pathology at Mayo Clinic and the president of Mayo Clinic Laboratories. This is our weekly discussion with Dr. Morice, in which we learn about updates in laboratory testing during the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, welcome back, Bill. It's always great talking with you.
Good to be here, as always.
As always. We've had some really good news this week, too. First, exciting news with the Pfizer vaccine, and now that's being rolled out. Individuals are getting their first of the 2-dose regimen. And I actually saw some promising data on the Moderna vaccine. So hopefully we'll have that as well. But then some other really positive news that I saw that I thought would be worth mentioning is that there are more people than ever interested in medicine and healthcare.
Oh.
And the statistics I saw that everyone's talking about is that there are record high numbers for people applying to medical school. And in some schools, the applicants are up somewhere between 20 to 40%,
Wow.
which usually it's 1 to 2% each year, according to these stories. So that's a lot of people interested in medicine. Isn't that exciting?
It is exciting, and it's a little surprising, but if you think about it, it's not at all unexpected. I mean, we haven't had a whole lot else to talk about.
Yes.
Number one, but two, I think people are really recognizing the need for good people and the presence of good people in healthcare, and really the dependence of society on people committing to taking care of others, and I think that's one of the silver linings of this is just the number of people in healthcare who have really been recognized for their efforts. Yeah, not just in healthcare, but outside of healthcare, really across the country and across the globe.
Yeah, it's really put healthcare and laboratory medicine, just across all areas of healthcare, actually in the forefront. Some people have actually been terming this the Fauci Effect after Dr. Fauci, because he's obviously played such an important role in this pandemic and he's in the spotlight. But of course, if you talk to Dr. Fauci, he's very modest and he says, I'm just one of many doing my best to contribute to this pandemic. But it's, I think, so important for people to see individuals like Dr. Fauci and be inspired by his work. And that's obviously inspiring others to want to do similar things in their future.
Yeah, and I think also, honestly, I agree 100%. I think the other piece of it, though, is that, the generation that would be applying to medical school are really seeing the needs for real change and continued thinking about healthcare. I mean, look at COVID has really illustrated the need for a truly ability to respond globally to the healthcare challenges that face us. Whether or not you believe in globalization, the reality is that COVID's demonstrated we're all interconnected, right? And the other thing is that I think about just the disparities, the healthcare disparities that have been highlighted by COVID. So there are a number, we've known this, for a long time, that we need to continue to improve healthcare, but I think this has really brought us to light. And at the same time, really, again, not just doctors, it's not just in medical school is great, but, for nursing as a profession, that really adds a lot of value to society. For the people in the lab, think about all the attention that people have to get the specimens and the risks that they expose themselves to. We have our phlebotomists and allied health staff in those roles, even in the laboratory. And there's been a number of stories about the people who are doing the real heroic work in Clin Micro here in the laboratories, but really across laboratory medicine. So I think it's a combination of awareness of the many different fields in medicine that you can go into, awareness of the real need to have people in those roles, and the awareness that in those roles you can not just take care of people, but really affect important societal change.
Yeah, it really is a team effort, isn't it? You think of healthcare and it's a whole range of individuals in various roles. It's not just the physicians, of course, it's the people that check the patients in. They're potentially getting exposed to patients. They're in the front line too. You have the respiratory therapists, the ICU nurses, the people that are taking care of the really sick patients, the people that are taking care of outpatients, people doing radiology, technicians, technologists, and then of course in the laboratory. And we've highlighted a few stories on this podcast of some of our laboratorians who have really been at the front line helping to develop tests for COVID.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to highlight science and healthcare, and actually to take this time to thank everyone who's really stepped up during this pandemic across all aspects of healthcare.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, the teamwork, it makes it a place like Mayo that's really founded on teamwork. I think that's one of the reasons we've been able to respond and help the country in this time of crisis. And honestly, as you were speaking, Bobbi, it brought me back to when I did my year of internal medicine before I went into pathology. And when people would come to Mayo and they were so scared when they were being admitted to the hospital. And think of the fear that COVID has engendered and continues to cause. And everyone that's involved in responding to COVID, from the laboratory to the nurses, to the desk staff, to the doctors, they have all been part of helping to quell those fears in people. So I think it is an important time to say thank you and to really recognize the people that have done a lot of work and have really stepped up. And I think it's, if nothing else, people being interested is a real validation of that. So that's great. I do think, though, too, you brought up an important point because we're going to hit the new year, and then you wonder. I mean, people wonder. So, what does 2021 bring? And in my mind, the image I have is that of COVID being a big wave, pardon the pun, but truly that hits a shore. I grew up on Long Island. I remember in the winter, you'd have these big waves and surges that would really change. You'd go back and the beach would look totally different. Sand dunes would have been moved and everything. And that's kind of how I think about COVID and healthcare. I think there's been this dramatic global response to the pandemic. And then we're going to look, and as that recedes, thankfully, it's going to leave the landscape of healthcare altered, and that's going to be nowhere is it going to be more evident, I think, than in diagnostics and laboratory medicine.
I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, because as the chair of the Department of Laboratory and Medicine and Pathology here at Mayo Clinic, what are your thoughts on what's in store in 2021 for laboratorians and laboratory medicine?
Well, it is, it's not just my chair, my job as a chair, which is important, but also the vista that I get from being the president of Mayo Clinic Labs. So not just looking within Mayo, but outside of Mayo, what do I see changing? Right. What do we see changing? The things that come to mind is, first of all, what people expect out of getting a test is going to change. There's going to be a movement to where more and more people are going to expect that they can get a lab test and not have to go to a hospital or a draw center, that somehow they'll be available to them in their home. And I think that will move with the overall migration that we have seen really accelerated in healthcare to virtual care models. The other piece of it is, and this really is from my discussions I've been able to have, at the national and even the global level through my work with the World Economic Forum, is there's just a general recognition that there's an underinvestment in our diagnostics infrastructure. That lab medicine it's so much of what we understand about what's going on with an individual. I think we're going to see a real renewed interest in in building that out and growing that out. And part of that's already happened. I was on a media briefing yesterday with the CEO of Roche, and they're mentioning how their install base for their molecular diagnostics globally has gone up in double-digit percentages because of the need for it. So I think that we're going to see that much heightened interest in diagnostics going forward.
Well, that really nicely ties into what we were talking about earlier, that there are more people interested in healthcare. And it's probably a good time to mention that pathologists and people working in laboratory medicine really play an integral part in healthcare. And whether it's for the COVID pandemic right now or what the future brings in laboratory testing, it's a great area to make a career in. And myself personally, as a pathologist and a clinical microbiologist, I'll put a plug in for those two areas. But there's many other careers that you could have in laboratory medicine, like our medical laboratory scientist program prepares people to actually perform clinical diagnostic testing.
Yeah, no, it's I can't speak to any one division. I don't want to be accused.
You don't want to be
favoring one over the other.
favorites.
I think honestly, to your point, Bobbi, is number one, there are such great opportunities. The lab is one area, going back to your point, where science and medicine really intersect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happens all over medicine, but certainly, I mean, that's why me as an MD PhD, that's why I was drawn to the field, because I wanted an area of medicine where I used both. And as you look forward, all sorts of opportunities for not just MDs, and PhDs in traditional areas like chemical chemistry, but even data scientists and thinking about where the future is going, or people that want to innovate technologically to think about what kind of device can you use to get blood from someone at their home in a painless way that can get tested. I mean, it's great there's young people, I hate to say that, it makes me feel old, but younger, new generation interested in healthcare and medicine, and hopefully they're interested in lab medicine, because it's going to be a very exciting frontier here now going forward, I think.
I agree. Yeah, so looking on the positive side, we're going to get through this pandemic. We have a lot to be thankful for, and a lot of people who played key roles. And one of the silver linings is that it's inspired people to look at all the various ways that they can contribute, and not just now, but going into 2021, 2022, in the future. Of course, medicine's a long road, but it's a career with lifelong learning, which is, I think, very exciting, especially as a scientist myself.
I agree, and I just, very Tavian and just recording this podcast, I should say, just at the time of the holidays, and I guess to end, for those of you who are celebrating the holidays in some way, I know it's a tough year for that. It's been a tough year for a lot of us, so thank you not only to the people in healthcare, but anyone who listens to this. Just want to wish you, happy holidays, however you celebrate. Hopefully you can connect with loved ones in some way that's meaningful to you. And the other thing we'll have to work on is really, how do we diagnose, for myself personally, an overindulgence in Christmas cookies, which I think is for here.
Is that a disorder? I think that's an okay disorder to have.
Yeah, I guess we don't want to test for that, because if we test, I don't want to know.
Well, I agree completely, Val. I'm wishing you a happy holidays as well, and I'll look forward to continuing to talk to you in the new year.
Yeah, me as well. Thank you. This is one of the many silver linings, is our time to chat. So it's great.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Answers from the Lab. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, and don't forget to tune in every Thursday and every other Tuesday.